What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Underdog Podcast today with my NFC free agent review. Some big news just went down. Tyreek Hill got traded to Miami. I will be covering that later today. But for now, let's get into this video. So again, we'll be going east to west. And I will be starting with fourth place team and then going to the first place team. So that starts us with the New York Giants, who they signed Tyrod Taylor to a 2-year deal. Decent backup. Tyrod's been around a long time, started a lot of games, looked really good at the beginning of last season for Houston. He's going to be a guy who's, if Daniel Jones gets hurt, like he did last year, can come in and win them games and actually somewhat move the offense, unlike Jake Fromm and Mike Glennon. So definitely an upgrade there to that quarterback room. Brings them a veteran guy to come in there and start games. They signed Matt Breida, who I've always really liked. He kind of hasn't really found his place since leaving San Francisco. He was in Miami, he was in Buffalo, and he didn't really stick there. So hopefully he can get some good reps with Devontae Booker leaving behind Saquon Barkley in New York. They signed Ricky Seals-Jones, who had a nice season last year for Washington. He was hurt a little bit, but I like that signing. I think they ended up cutting Kyle Rudolph, so he'll be probably their tight end one, unless if they get somebody in the draft. So I like that move. He's, long, lengthy, height, weight, speed guy. He's very fast at the tight end position. Played receiver in college at Texas A&M. So, but you'd think the Giants would add some more pieces there as well. They also have Caden Smith, so decent tight end room. They bring in veteran John Feliciano at guard. As a decent piece there. He started some games in Buffalo, good depth there, veteran player. And then they bring in Mark Lewinsky, who's probably another underrated move. He was a very good starting guard for the Colts the last couple seasons. And definitely is an upgrade over anybody they have. So that also takes care of a starter that they don't have to worry about in the draft. And then a couple just, depth pieces in Jihad Ward, and then Casey Creeder is a long snapper they bring in. So then we have the Washington Commanders, who, again, I covered the trade with Carson Wentz. They bring him in. Carson Wentz actually had a pretty good season last year, except for Week 18, losing to the Jags and missing out on the playoffs. But I think it was a decent move by Washington to bring him in. I mean, he's definitely an upgrade over Heineke. It's just, which Wentz are we getting really is the question. I thought they did give up too much for him, though, in my opinion, but it could pay off in the long run if they get that Wentz that played last year, except for that Jags game or that year in 2018 where he's an MVP candidate. He re-signed J.D. McKissic, who I really like. Definitely a very versatile guy, can run the ball and is a very good receiving back out of the backfield. As he was a wide receiver in college at Arkansas State. McKissic's just he's a little firework with the ball in his hands, man. It seems like every time he touches the ball, he makes a play. So this is definitely a big piece coming back for Washington alongside of Gibson in the backfield. They re-signed Cam Sims, who's a big body free agent, or big body receiver, sorry. Just kind of a depth piece there. Depth of that room. And then they replace Scherf, who went to Jacksonville, with Andrew Norwell from Jacksonville. So it's kind of a swap there with those two teams. Norwell is not as good as Scherf by any means, but he's still a very solid guard. Probably one of the better guys they could have picked up. They re-signed Tyler Larson, who will bring depth to them at center, and he can also play some guard. And then they re-signed Bobby McCain, who's kind of played all types of positions. He was more of a slot corner in Miami, and played some safety and has kind of played both here in Washington. He's kind of he's not as good as he used to be. Kind of had a down season last year, but a veteran type player that can potentially has room to improve from last season. When we go to the Philadelphia Eagles, they re-signed Boston Scott, who has kind of managed to stick around there. Similar to J.D. McKissic, where he's kind of a firework with the ball in his hands, is really explosive, I think, in the receiving game as well. He's had a bunch of, notable, performances on that end. Philadelphia continues to keep him around here. They signed Zach Paschall, who in 2020 had a really good season in 2019. It was kind of on the come up to be one of these, up and coming slot receivers. And then last season, he just kind of took like a massive step back. I think he was the worst graded receiver by PFF. So it's going to be interesting. He'll fight with Greg Ward Jr., who they re-signed for slot reps. I like Zach Paschall more than most. And I'm hoping he can make an impact here for Philadelphia more than like Jalen Reagor has or Greg Ward, so that they have like a decent 2 there. I think Paschall's probably going to play out of the slot, so we'll see what kind of impact he can make for them this season. They re-signed Jason Kelsey to a new 1-year deal. I think he's probably coming to the end, but it's good that they get him back because I think Kelsey truly is the best center in football. It's just he's so valuable, and not only just like with his leadership, with his intangibles, his IQ, stuff like that, but he's just like so valuable on those like wide zone runs where they just get him on the move, and he's so great at just like clearing space for runners. He's a fantastic player. And the Eagles, good thing the Eagles got him back. They also bring back Fletcher Cox after cutting him. I think it was a cap space move type thing, so it's good to get him back. He hasn't been the same player the last couple of years, but it's still Fletcher Cox. I mean, he can still turn it on when you need him. So, and then they get Hassan Reddick, which this move is interesting because, Philly has Josh Sweat, and they have a couple of other pieces there on the edge. But I think Hassan Reddick, the last 2 years has really proven that he can live up to the billing of the first-round pick. And it's kind of weird because he's more of that like 3-4 edge, not 4-3, and so it'll be interesting to see how he's utilized in Philadelphia, as he's not really that like hand in the dirt type guy. But I'm excited to see how Philadelphia's going to use him. And then they bring back Anthony Harris, who had a really good season in 2019 for the Minnesota Vikings. And then he kind of, had a down 2020 and then was kind of similar to his 2020 year in 2021. So I'm interested to see if Anthony Harris can click and see if he can get, that 2019 form that really was going to pay him a lot of money, and he really hasn't, gone back there. And then they also bring back Andre Chichere as a special teamer. Then we get to the Cowboys, who re-signed Michael Gallup, who has been hurt a lot the last 2 seasons, but I think Gallup's really, he's got phenomenal ball skills, good deep ball route runner, underrated route runner, has solid hands when he's on the field, and he's a difference maker. When he's on the field, it's just, how much of the time is he going to spend on the field and how much of the time he's going to spend off with the injury issues that he's had recently. And then they bring in James Washington as kind of that Cedric Wilson replacer. It'll be interesting to see because James Washington will actually get on the field this year, unlike last year in Pittsburgh where he was kind of the 4th receiver. So it'll be interesting to see how James Washington and what his production is coming in there as wide receiver 3 for this Cowboys team that loves to throw the football. They franchise tagged Dalton Schultz, who had a really good season last year, and I'm a really big fan of. He's kind of like that chain mover, just like 8 yards a catch, like Jason Witten type player. I think he's more athletic than Jason Witten, though. And a little bit faster, but I really like that move bringing him back. He had a really solid season for the Cowboys last year. And they bring back Demarcus Lawrence on a new deal, which I really was surprised by because I thought they were going to just end up cutting him, but that's massive. Definitely one of the more underrated edge players in the league. Demarcus Lawrence, when he's healthy, is a phenomenal player. I don't think he's that 14.5 sack guy that he used to be, but I think he's like at least 8 to 12. And he's really, really good against the run. I think that's another underrated piece. Dallas was terrible against the run when he was out of the lineup last year, so really good that they brought him back. They bring in Dante Fowler, who's familiar with playing for Dan Quinn. I think it's a, whatever signing. I mean, Fowler hasn't really been, what he should have been coming out of Florida, I think. He just, he kind of had a couple magic years in Jacksonville and LA and then really didn't do much in Atlanta, and now he's kind of trying to reestablish himself here in Dallas. They bring back Leighton Vander Esch on a really cheap contract. I'm really surprised that Leighton Vander Esch didn't get more money. New England was in the running for him. I was hoping they would get him, but that's kind of big that Leighton Vander Esch is back here for Dallas. It's been, kind of a question mark with the injuries and stuff. But I think Leighton Vander Esch can still get back to that, early season form he had as a rookie in his second year. He also re-signed Malik Hooker and Jaron Kearse. Malik Hooker has really dealt with injuries over the last couple of seasons, but he's a very special player when he's out there and healthy, which is why he was drafted in the first round by Indianapolis. And then Jaron Kearse is just kind of whatever. I'm not really too high on him. And then they bring back their long snapper, Jake McQuaid, and Brian Anger, their punter. So now moving on to the NFC North, we have the Detroit Lions, who bring back David Blau and Tim Boyle as quarterbacks to their room behind Jared Goff. They signed DJ Chark, which I thought was a really underrated move. And they got him pretty cheap, I will say. I thought he would go for like 12 or 14 million, and they got him for 10 on a one-year deal. It brings him a true number one receiver. He is coming off an injury, but I really like this move for Detroit. It really gives them a guy that can get open consistently one-on-one besides Amon-Ra St. Brown. So they have a nice tandem there, and hope they'd get another one at either pick 32 or 34 in this draft class. And then you have Khalif Raymond and Josh Reynolds. They bring back on 2-year deals to the team. Khalif Raymond really had a good season for them last year, really stepped up when other guys didn't. He had a couple really nice games for them as a really nice deep threat. And then Josh Reynolds is kind of, he's really fallen apart since he left the Rams. He went to the Titans and really didn't do much there, and then signed with the Lions. He's capable of being a 3. He just really hasn't shown it in the last year or two. So we'll see kind of what impact Josh Reynolds can make, because he kind of came to the Lions late and kind of had a couple decent games, but we'll see if he can actually make an impact. They signed Garrett Griffin at tight end. How Dan Campbell loves his tight ends, and Garrett Griffin's a really good blocker, which Dan Campbell will appreciate. They re-signed Evan Brown as depth. For their offensive line, they bring back edge Charles Harris, who's kind of been a, first round bust, but he did have a decent season last year for Detroit, in all honesty. So we'll see what kind of impact he can make there. I think that, definitely the biggest need for the Lions is edge. So there's still a couple guys out there in free agency, but I think the draft will be probably the biggest place where they can get that. They bring back Alex Anzaloni, who I've never really been a big fan of. He's just kind of, he doesn't really do anything too well. I mean, he's an okay coverage player. He's okay against the run. He's just kind of okay against everything. They bring in Chris Board, who's a nice special teamer. They re-signed Tracy Walkers, one of my favorite players on this team. I think really underrated, has really good ball skills, good range at free safety, can play the run, can cover. Does struggle a little bit in man coverage, but overall, Tracy Walker is a very solid player. And they also bring back special teamer CJ Moore. And then the Bears, who really haven't done too much. They bring in Byron Pringle and Equinemius St. Brown as depth receivers. They bring in Lucas Patrick, who's a solid guard to replace James Daniels. And I think, is definitely going to help in pass pro. He's a very good pass protecting guard. Losing James Daniels was tough, but at least they bring in somebody kind of his caliber, if not slightly below it, to replace him. They bring in Al-Qadim Muhammad, who was with Matt Eberflus in Indianapolis on a 2-year deal as he's very, he's going to be good against the run, can kind of give you some pass rush, but more against the run. Also, they bring in Justin Jones for that reason. Very good run defender on the interior D-line. And then they bring in Nicholas Moreau, who's kind of been kind of lost at that depth chart in Las Vegas. Going to be interested to see, if he's, upgraded to a bigger role here in Chicago. And then they bring back DeAndre Houston Carson, who's a versatile DB. He's played slot corner, has played safety, kind of a, wherever he kind of fits a piece of the puzzle is where Eberflus will play him. Then they bring back their long snapper, Patrick Scales. Then we have the Vikings, who re-signed Kirk Cousins to a $35 million, 1-year deal that was fully guaranteed. which reduces his cap number this year, and then it puts him under contract through 2023. Kirk really had a really good season last year, and no one really talked about it. I think he had like 35 touchdowns and like 7 picks. And a lot of people talk about how Kirk's not like a big game quarterback, and that may be true, but Kirk Cousins, I think, is a guy to watch this season. And that offense in general, with Kevin O'Connell coming over from LA, going to be really intrigued to see how well Kirk does with that offense. They also bring back Sean Mannion to a 1-year deal to compete for that backup role with Kellen Mond. They bring in Harrison Phillips coming over from Buffalo, I believe, on a 3-year deal that really helps that run defense that really struggled last season with Danielle Hunter being out, no real edge presence. And speaking of edge presence, they get Sedaria Smith on a 3-year deal. If him and Danielle Hunter can stay healthy, I truly think Minnesota's probably a playoff team. Those two, when healthy, are two of the best in the business. Danielle Hunter especially, he's just had a real bad break with injuries, and Sedaria Smith was out all last season for Green Bay. But you look at that 2020 year when he was healthy. I mean, Sedaria Smith wreaked havoc on the league when he was healthy for the Green Bay Packers. They also bring in Jordan Hicks, who's a nice veteran linebacker, can cover. It's going to be a real nice piece next to Eric Kendricks. And they also re-signed their punter, Jordan Berry. Then we go to the Packers. They re-signed Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, I talked about that a couple weeks ago. They bring back Alan Rizzard on a second-round tender. Look, Alan Rizzard was a beast at Iowa State, but he has really, I don't want to say struggle, but he's just really been underwhelming in Green Bay. He's not a great route runner. I think he's an underrated deep ball receiver, but he's slow. He's not great out of his cuts. So it's really interesting because he's like their wide receiver 1 right now with Randall Cobb, and Juwan Winfrey and a bunch of other guys. So it'll be interesting to see if the Packers sign somebody in free agency or just wait till the draft and draft like 2 guys in the first round. They bring back Robert Tonyan, who I think has been a solid tight end for them. Went down last season with a torn ACL in the Arizona game, I believe. So it's good to have him back, because if not, they'd be stuck with Josiah DeGuara, who's whatever. They bring in Jerron Reed as a free agent, which is a nice piece next to Kenny Clark. Upgrades their run defense and pass rush. He can do a little bit of both. So it's a very solid signing for the Green Bay Packers next to Kenny Clark. They bring in Preston Smith as that edge, which was interesting. They brought him back instead of Za'Darius, because I think Za'Darius is a much better player. But I think Preston Smith was willing to take a pay cut for the team, which is why they brought him back. When Preston Smith's at his best, he's a very, good player. I think 2019 was probably his best season for the Packers, where he had 11 sacks or something like that. But he's like an 8 to 10 sack guy, and he'll be there next to Rashawn Gary, and that'll be, a above average pass rush duo. And they bring back Devondre Campbell, which I was so surprised by, that Green Bay actually paid up for him after having an insane season that he did. Because Green Bay really doesn't bring back guys, really doesn't pay big for guys, but they were like, hey, we need to go all in for Aaron Rodgers here, and I'm glad they brought back Devondre Campbell, because he had a phenomenal season, all-pro caliber season for the Green Bay Packers. And then they also brought back Rasul Douglas, which was another big piece to bring back. Rasul Douglas came in and just balled out. I mean, he really made a difference for that team when Jair Alexander was out, and they're going to be, he's going to come back this season, and hopefully, they're going to have a really solid cornerback room. And then they bring in Pat O'Donnell, the punter, over from the Chicago Bears. So now we move on to the NFC South, where we start with the Carolina Panthers. They bring in Deontay Foreman, who had a really nice run with Tennessee. When Derrick Henry went down, he was kind of like that power back. It was kind of a mix of him and Hilliard. So that was, it's a decent signing. Bring him in here as kind of that power option with Chuba and Christian McCaffrey. They bring in Rashard Higgins, who had a really bad 2020 after having a really good 2019. Higgins is kind of just depth at this point behind them. They re-signed DJ Moore to a nice contract. And I think DJ Moore really just has been suffering from bad quarterback play. DJ Moore's a phenomenal receiver, phenomenal route runner, really gets open and has really great speed and has good hands. I just think he's really suffered from bad quarterback play, which is why you haven't seen him, been putting up the stats. And, you see, McLaurin has a good quarterback, but, it's you can only do so much as a receiver. The quarterback still has to get you the ball, and the quarterbacks haven't been getting him the ball as much as he should. And then they re-signed Zylstra to a one-year deal, had some, kind of flash plays there last season. They bring in guys to help them out on the offensive line in Austin Corbett, who has been a solid starter for LA the last couple of seasons. Upgrade over whoever they had there at guard, and Bradley Bozeman at center is an upgrade there because I believe they're losing Matt Paradis. I don't think he's coming back, so I don't think he's as good as Paradis, but certainly better than anybody else they have on their roster. So 2 solid moves there from Carolina to upgrade their offensive line. Then to upgrade their defensive line, they bring in Marquise Haynes and Matt Ioannidis. Ioannidis was kind of pushed back from that D-line because there were so many pieces there in Washington. Ioannidis is really good pass rusher, will really help out Burns there in that pass rush after losing Hassan Reddick. And then they bring in Corey Littleton and Damien Wilson at linebacker. They re-signed Dante Jackson, which I thought was a really solid move. So it brings him back with J.C. Horn as a really nice young cornerback duo because I think they're going to be losing Stephon Gilmore. And then they re-signed Sean Chandler as well as a depth piece at safety, and they bring in Xavier Woods, who has started games for both Dallas and Minnesota and has been a very solid safety over the last couple of years. They bring in Johnny Hecker, who's one of the best punters in the game, and they re-sign their kicker, Zane Gonzalez. Then we have the Falcons, who bring in Marcus Mariota. I am all for the Marcus Mariota redemption arc. I really am. I think Marcus Mariota definitely deserves another shot. Don't know how long he's going to get, but, he's, familiar with the system with Arthur Smith. Really had hasn't started games since 2019. But I think, you saw flashes. Like the game Carr got hurt, pulled his hamstring or something in 2020, and he came in and absolutely balled out. Mariota has the capabilities of, being a really, really good quarterback in this league still. He just kind of washed out in Tennessee. I think, you'll see him take more risks, which was kind of the knock against him, and hopefully he can stay healthy. That was another big reason why he didn't stay the starter in Tennessee. But you have seen him have success in this league, and I think that Mariota can, achieve those heights again. He's going to need some receivers first, but I do really like this move from Atlanta. I really do. They re-signed Cordarrelle Patterson, who was really their best weapon outside of Kyle Pitts last season. Was just doing it all for them. Was they're playing running back, was playing receiver, played freaking safety for them at some point. Cordarrelle Patterson is the best wild card you can have on your team. He can do everything there for him. They also brought in Damien Williams, who had a okay season last year in Chicago, but he opted out in 2020, had a really good 2019. I like that signing for them. When they have CP, they have Damien Williams, and then they have Mike Davis. I like that running back room a lot, actually. So it'll be interesting to see how much they utilize Damien Williams. They bring back Jake Matthews on a 3-year extension, which reduces cap hit in 2022. Jake Matthews has been a really solid tackle for them forever now, ever since he was drafted a first-round pick. Like to bring him back. Elijah Wilkinson, I like them bringing in as a nice swingman or a potential starter at right tackle if Caleb McGarry does not improve, as he has not been great start out. He can also play guard where Mayfield has struggled. Then they signed Lorenzo Carter at edge. I really like Lorenzo Carter. I've always been a fan of him since he's coming out of Georgia. I think he was hurt last season for the Giants. I like this move on a 1-year flyer on a guy that has, some upside. So I do like this move from Atlanta. He just really never got going in New York after he came out of Georgia. And then I like bringing in Casey Hayward next to A.J. Terrell. I really like that move to have, a good secondary. And then they re-sign Isaiah Oliver, who never really got going. But I did like him coming out of Colorado, so we'll see if he can be as much of an impact. But Casey Hayward definitely had a really good season last year for Vegas, he just continues to play really well into his mid-30s. So I really like that signing in a very affordable deal for the Atlanta Falcons. Re-signed Eric Harris at safety. Is kind of a depth piece, and they re-signed Younghoe Koo, who's been one of the better kickers since he's got to Atlanta. Then the Saints, real quick list, they re-signed Jameis Winston, which I thought was the best move they possibly could, and hearing that Taysom Hill, the experiment at QB for him, is over. So I like that move for the Saints. I think Jameis, before he got hurt, was doing pretty good, was probably borderline top 20 quarterback, so we'll see if he can continue that trend, and I think New Orleans got him at an affordable price for sure. Then they bring in Kentavious Street, who's just a depth piece on the edge, and they bring in Marcus May to replace Marcus Williams. I don't think he's as good as Marcus Williams, but I think that's definitely probably the best guy they could have gotten outside of Tyrann Mathieu to replace him. So very good deal and very affordable deal. Marcus May, when he's motivated and on, he's a very, very good player, very good range at safety, very good covers and ball skills. He's not as good against the run as Marcus Williams, and he's not as physical, but he is, I think, the better cover player. Has better range than Marcus Williams did. So then we have the Bucs. So Brady comes out of retirement, which was not necessarily a shock to me, but I was just surprised he did it so soon. So they get Brady back, and he worked his contract to give them cap space. They bring back Leonard Fournette, which on a very affordable deal for them. I mean, playoff Lenny, he's the man in the playoffs. With Ronald Jones probably on his way out, it means more time for Leonard Fournette to be in the spotlight. They get Shaq Mason in a trade, absolute steal by New England. I still don't understand this move by New England. I mean, I get it in terms of it clears cap space, but it was just a dumb move in general. So, heck of a move there by Tampa Bay, and he's certainly an upgrade over Alex Kappa, and we'll see if Ali Marpet comes back out of retirement. They bring in Russell Gage, who I really, really, really like. I'm surprised Atlanta let him go. Russell Gage will be, that slot receiver for them. We'll see the kind of rapport he has with Tom Brady. He was really good once Calvin Ridley went down for the Atlanta Falcons. He's a really good route runner, has good hands. So I like that move by Tampa Bay to bring him in. And then Godwin was tagged and then later re-signed. So good to keep him. I mean, he's been phenomenal when he's not hurt. Great hands, great ball skills, great route runner. I mean, Chris Godwin's a freaking stud, man. And they bring back Rashad Penny as that kind of speed threat for them on the outside there. He actually had some really good moments. The game-winning touchdown against Buffalo comes to mind. So I like that move to bring him back actually as kind of that just straight vertical threat for them. They bring back Aaron Stinney as depth for Tampa. They also bring in they re-signed Ryan Jensen on a very affordable deal as he's one of the best run-blocking centers in the league. And they also bring back Carlton Davis on a very affordable deal of only $15 million a year. I think Carlton Davis, one of the more underrated players at the cornerback position. He's a very solid man-cover corner, and Tampa does a really good job keeping him back. When he went down last season, their defense really suffered when he was not in there. And they bring in Logan Ryan, who can play slot corner, outside corner, and safety, and has, been a really solid player in this league for a long time. And then we move to the NFC West, and we start with the Seattle Seahawks, who acquired Drew Lock via trade for Russell Wilson. I'm excited to see if Drew Lock will actually get a chance here. There's been rumblings that Baker Mayfield may be traded to Seattle, but I'm okay with Drew Lock's just starting for a year for Seattle, honestly. I think there was a report that came out that Fangio didn't like that he had personality at the quarterback position, which is absurd. So I like Drew Lock getting another chance here in Seattle. He's got weapons. The one question maybe is his offensive line. But I think he's got weapons here, so I think Drew Lock can end up succeeding. But we'll see how he ends up doing here. As they bring back Rashad Penny on a nice one-year deal. I think Rashad Penny's a top 20 back when he's healthy. Really explosive. Really was great for them at the end of last season when he finally got healthy. It's just, can he stay healthy? Him and Chris Carson both have those injury concerns. Then they brought back Will Dissly, who, like, I think it was 19 or 20, looked to be like the next big thing at tight end, and then like tore his ACL and then just kind of like disappeared. So they bring back Will Dissly here, but they also like acquired Noah Fant, so I'm really confused why they brought back Dissly. So it'll be interesting to see if Seattle starts utilizing more two tight end sets or not, because both those guys are, solid tight ends. They bring in Austin Blythe, who's been a solid starter at center and definitely an upgrade over anything they have. They re-signed Kyle Fuller as a depth piece. Also in the Russell Wilson trade, they got Shelby Harris, and then they signed Quentin Jefferson and re-signed Al Woods to beef up that interior defensive line and upgrade that run defense that has been absolutely atrocious the last couple seasons. They bring in Uchenna Nwosu over from LA as a nice edge piece. And then they bring in Artie Burns as a corner, most likely to replace DJ Reed. I don't think he's as good as DJ Reed, but affordable deal and a cheap free agent there for Seattle. They re-signed Sidney Jones, who had a great season last year playing in the slot for Seattle. I really like that move by them. Sidney Jones kind of bounced around, but I think he's found a home here and has really succeeded in Seattle. And then Quandre Diggs, they bring him back as well. He's been a really good safety for the last couple of seasons. Then we have 49ers, another quick one. Re-signed JaMycal Hasty, who I've been really high on, hoping he gets more playing time for San Francisco with the departure of Raheem Mostert. They bring in Raymond McLeod as kind of that on a 2-year deal as their like return man type thing. Then they bring in Hassan Ridgeway to bolster that run-stopping unit. They bring in Oren Burks, who's really versatile piece. He's got some really good cover skills coming over from Green Bay. Not great against the run, but more of kind of that like dime linebacker-esque type guy. They bring in Charvarius Ward, which I thought was a really good deal for them. Corner was really the one position they really, really needed, and Charvarius Ward's a really underrated player. Can play man, can play zone. Really solid deal there too. I mean, they don't have to pay too much for him, and they also bring in safety George Odom to establish that back end. And then we have the Arizona Cardinals, who re-signed Colt McCoy as that veteran backup, bring back James Conner on a 3-year deal, who was really, really good for them, made the Pro Bowl last year, which he shouldn't have, but he still did. They re-signed Zach Ertz, which I thought was a really good deal. Ertz at one point was probably like the second or third best tight end in the league. He's really kind of fallen off from there, but he's still a solid tight end. Chain mover, physical, good blocker. I mean, just everything that Arizona needs at tight end. And Max Williams is coming back, and he was having a really good season before he got hurt. So I like that tandem at tight end there. And then they re-sign a couple guys, Michael Dobby and Dennis Gardeck at IDL and linebacker. And then they signed Nick Vigil, which is kind of whatever at linebacker. He's kind of bounced around the league at this point. And then they signed Jeff Gladney, which is a decent, low risk, high reward type signing. I mean, Gladney has, dealt with legal issues and didn't really succeed well in Minnesota. But, if he can get back to that form that he was at TCU coming out, that made him a first round pick, I think that's, a steal there from Arizona. I mean, they don't really have anything to lose because they don't have much at that corner position. So I actually really did like that signing from Arizona as a, low risk, high reward type signing. And then we have the Rams, who re-signed Matthew Stafford to a deal after he won them the Super Bowl. They bring in Allen Robinson, who I'm going to say this. Allen Robinson is a top 10 receiver in the league. You can't tell me otherwise. Very physical receiver, great hands, has the lowest drop percentage in the league over the last couple of years. This dude doesn't drop anything. He's physical. He had a down season last year because they just were like, we're not going to utilize Allen Robinson this year on the tag. Go look at the numbers. There was a tweet I saw was like his I know he was hurt like part of the season, but like his targets were way down. His receptions were way down. Everything was way down because the Rams or the Bears just refused to use him for some reason. I don't understand why, but it's whatever. And then they bring back Joe Noteboom and they bring back Brian Allen to re-bolster our O-line. Noteboom's a good swing man for them, and then Brian Allen will return to his starting role at center. So that is all for this video today. I will have a video later out today about Tyreek Hill, the news that he got traded to Miami. So that will be up later today, so we'll have 2 videos in one day. But I hope you enjoyed watching. My mock draft, I'm hoping to come out Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If not, it would be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. So stay tuned for that. I will let you guys know later today in the Tyreek Hill video. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for more content. Have a great day, everybody, and peace.